Hello again and welcome back. Just going to do a quick video today with an update on the fry discus I showed you the other day and on some of the other tanks in the small fish room I have at home, and also just fill in a few blanks on how I raise the fry and the equipment I use to raise them, and I'll tune in and tell you a little bit more about the tank we're showing now in a minute or two. So this is the equipment you'll need initially when you're artificially raising the discus. You need a dark object to replicate the parent, which in this instance I'm using the bottom of a sponge filter. It's weighted so it'll stay down on the bottom, and it's black and cylindrical, so it will replicate the parent really well. Obviously you need to get yourself a turkey baster. You're going to be using the turkey baster to transfer the free swimmers from one location to another. Your air stone, it doesn't really matter, but I prefer white. It then doesn't take away from the black object you've got, so all the fry can focus on is a black object to feed off of. And then obviously your mixture. Now the egg mixture that I use, I showed you in the last video how to make it and what I put in it, and then I just keep it refrigerated. Maximum of 48 hours, so 2 days it'll keep for before you need to make up another batch, but keep it refrigerated. When you're then applying it, all you want to do is spread it really thinly across the black surface. If we zoom in here, you can see there are very small bits, but generally speaking just like fingerprints, like a smear across it. Make sure you got clean hands, definitely no soap or anything like that on your hands, and then smear it across. You then want to leave it to stand for about 30 to 40 minutes to dry off, otherwise as soon as you put it in the water everything's going to float off of it. Then those extra bits you can see, those large chunks, you just want to shake them off before you put it in. As I said in my last video, think about how much you're going to need and then actually use 10% of what you think. Overfeeding is the worst thing you can do, and I literally use a finger smear all the way around, smear it all the way around it so there's plenty of surface area. At the moment we've got about 100 to 150 fry to feed, they are all free swimming now. And we're going to the fish room and I'll show you how I feed them. Just before we go into the fish room, I'd say every time you do a water change, take the air stone out. They're made of a porous material so they can absorb any bacteria or any dirt from the water, and if you don't take it out and clean it every time, you're just going to be transferring a dirty air stone into clean water, which is then going to pollute the water. Also, you see people put in the egg mix actually on an air stone for them to feed off of. Don't do that. Air stones, as I said before, are porous, and they really will start to smell after, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours. If you lift it out and give it a sniff, the egg mixture is warm to your tank temperature, so somewhere between 27-30 degrees or 80 to 84 Fahrenheit, and it's going to pong, and obviously when it pongs it's polluting the water, it's letting off things into the water in all these tiny little porous holes you get in your air stone. So never use an air stone to actually smear the mix onto. Always use a flat plastic surface like I've got here. Some people use CD cases and things like that. Anything that's flat plastic, not porous, is perfect for the job. Right, let's go and check out the babies. So we're now on day 2 of free swimming. We've got about 100, maybe 80 to 100 fry in there. As I said before, they're in a white bowl, a white surface with a black surface for them to feed off of. So the black surface is actually the base of a sponge filter that's made of plastic, and it's weighted so it will stay on the bottom. They are visiting it and feeding, as you can see. I've not long just changed the water, so they're still kind of sporadic around the bowl. There's a few stragglers here and there, but generally speaking they will find their way to the food. If they don't, the parents naturally would pick them up and spit them back out on a cone, or pick them up and spit them back out on the partner to feed off of. So you can gently pick them up with a turkey baster and move them over. Now the brown you can see at the bottom of the bowl is just some crumbed up flake, and also a little bit of Hikari first bites. That's just for them to feed off of when they're down on the bottom. There was a few that were still in the early stages of free swimming, maybe still at the wriggler stage. and they were actually just hanging around on the bottom, so it was just giving them something to feed off of whilst down there. But now they're all fairly frequently visiting the black surface, as you can see, all swimming around. Water parameters are bang on, 2 water changes a day. Leave the feed, the black object, in there for no longer than 2 hours, then take it out, dry it, clean it thoroughly, and go again. Being an egg-based substance that they're feeding off of, the most important thing is to make sure it is thoroughly clean before you put it back in. You don't want the water to go polluted or pungent. It does certainly kick up a bit of a smell, so you're constantly cleaning that throughout the day. The pot itself is just floated, it's a white tub. I've got it clamped onto the rim of the tank here, just with a normal DIY quick grip clamp, and that's just floating in the tank, so it's getting its warmth purely from the tank water. The tank it's in at the moment is currently reading at 28.6 degrees, and the water in the pot is probably about half a degree lower. Now, next to the pot, I've got bubbling away a pot of brine shrimp ready to go for tomorrow or the day after. I make my brine shrimp just purely through putting an upturned bottle in the tank. It then gets its heat from the tank, you don't need a light, and then 2 hoses connected on a cap at the bottom. The green line is the air line, and then the white line has a stopper on the end, and that's to withdraw the brine shrimp when you're ready. So we're currently like 16 hours in on the brine shrimp, give it another 8 hours and then we'll be able to take it away. And the tank they're floating in, just give you a bit of info on this tank. So I use this tank as a kind of a proving tank or a pairing tank. So any discus that haven't yet paired go in here, and then I'm lucky enough to have a CCTV camera in this room. So when I'm in the lounge, I can flick on the CCTV and just monitor and see who's pairing and what behaviour they're doing. And then once they're paired, they go into one of the breeding systems. In this tank here, we've got large male pigeon blood, red at the sort of mid-ground there. He's pushing on 8 to 9 inches. He's an absolute whopper, and when you look at him face on, he's a good inch and a half thick. The inquisitive one you can see coming up to us there is, sorry about the glare off the other tanks, but that's a leopard snake skin, and then you've got a red squib behind them. All the discus in this tank are all Stenker, so they're all German Stenker. I've had them all either bred myself or since fry, or since sort of 2.5 inches. And there's a combination of fish in here just waiting for them to naturally pair up. I just keep an eye on the camera for breeding behaviour, any signs of pairing, i.e. them doing the dance that they do, or pecking at the glass, or even laying eggs on the glass, and then I move them into a tank. What I also do is rest my breeding pairs in here. I've got a larger system to my left, which I'll show you shortly, but it's currently not running. There's no need for it to run. I haven't got the fish to put in it at the moment, and I'm focusing a little bit more on L number plecos going forward. I will continue doing the discus, but L number plecos are taking up a lot more space at the moment. So I do also rest pairs. Longest I keep them in a breeding tank for is 6 weeks. At the end of the 6 weeks, I rest them. So this female here, for instance, she spawned with the male, the 8-9 inch male that you can see here, but I always make sure I rest them for a period. Excuse the dirtiness of the glass, bit of watermarks just where I've been doing a water change on the tanks above. But yeah, always give them the opportunity to rest in this tank. The downside to the tank, it's bare bottom, it's got an Eheim 300 watt heater in it, it's a 300 litre tank. It is relatively small, but it runs off a sump system and also has sponge filters in there. They're not running at the moment because of the noise of the air pump, but it's more than enough for them, just to watch them pair, etc. As I say, she's resting in here with him, and then when they pair off again, I'll move them over. The jugs I have floating in the top are just warming up RO water, ready to use in the white bowl there with the fry, but the water actually in the tank is your standard old tap water. I normally use a HMA filter, but at the moment I'm just dechlorifying tap water because my HMA filter I'm rigging into a drip system on a larger tank, which I'll show you in a second. I'll move on to some of the other tanks now. In my opinion, artificially raising fry compared to letting the parents actually raise them themselves, there's very few benefits, if any. The only benefit being is those fry you've just seen that have just turned into free swimmers. These are the parents, and as you can see, they're back at it again on the breeding comb. Tank parameters are spot on. I always keep this rack regular on water changes and monitor the parameters closely, but you can see if these were looking after their own young, they would still be in the stage of feeding the young, but you can see there the female is already making runs to lay eggs and the male is continuing to peck away at the comb. So that's really one of the few advantages of artificially raising, is that the parents get back to it almost straight away. You see the male there just telling me to go away, so I'll back off and leave them to it. At the moment, on one of the lower systems in the fish room, I've got these 4 brilliants, or Turks, whichever you want to call them. They're just about ready now to be moved out of this smaller tank. The tank itself is just 120 litre base tank. That's a grow out system. I really do follow Stenker's guidelines when it comes to feeding and growing out fish. These are just touching on 7 months old, and they're already 4.5 inches, full colour. Their development, their health, and everything's bang on, and that's by keeping them in a smaller tank for a lengthy period, letting them develop before they go into one of the bigger systems, and it just stops you getting stunted fish. So these guys here are ready to move over, and as I say, when the 5 foot system, which is behind me, I'll show you in a minute, once that's plumbed and ready, they'll be moving straight on into there. But stunning fish, not of breeding age yet, but they will be moved over and given the opportunity to pair up, etc. later on. I have a few systems in the rack for Plecos. In here I've just got a bristlenose pair, and you can see the male in the cave. This tank stays pretty dirty, and any fish that are kind of held back, so aren't growing quite right, I'll give them the opportunity to develop. I don't just cull them straight away. And there was just these 2 blue diamonds that are banging on 3 months, but just not growing quick enough. They've got a fairly decent shape to them. The angle I'm at doesn't really show it off, but if I show you, the shape's good, the coloration's good, the finish is good. They're just not growing at the same rate as the rest of as the spawn. So they're in this tank. It's a 60 litre small cube that's part of a rack, and they will stay in here until they start feeding and catch up with their brothers and sisters size wise. I don't like culling fish. Equally, I don't like diluting the hobby with poor species or poor strains, so I think it is important to only really pair up and move on healthy and correct shape Discus, but at the same point these guys are pretty cute, so I've held them back and just taking care of them in this tank here. They are eating, they're feeding, just for some reason they're not putting on the bulk of the size. Moving into here tomorrow will be a pack of golden nugget Plecos that I'm going to be working on breeding over the next few weeks, and then I've got the snowballs and zebra Plecos as well, which I'll show you in a forthcoming video that also I'm working on a breeding program on. I'll sign off and leave you with the next project I'm working on, which are these 5 foot tanks. So I've got 2 5 foot brace tanks that are going to be plumbed in to the system. Down below them I have a 450-500 litre tank, and then I have a sump off to the right. But these tanks are eventually going to hold the adults and the fry once they've grown to an appropriate size. But these are just the grow out facilities, so there's a bit more space to move them into. Like those Turks where they're getting to 4.5 inches, it just gives them a little bit more space to swim and be free and show off their true colours, etc. For now, take care, and I will see you again soon, and I'll give you an update in a couple of days on the fry. Take care, bye.